Hamburger University with Ronald McDonald.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Ronald.
Today's subject, the Hamburglar. The Hamburglar is very clever and very sneaky.
The Hamburglar!
And he loves taking McDonald's hamburgers. So, what should you yell when you see it?
Help, Ronald, sailor!
That's right.
Uh-oh.
Hamburglar.
It's a good time for the train.
You've got a lot to learn.
Don't take burgers, Rubble Rubble.
Peter Monn is the most bothered person on YouTube. He actually compares flipping burgers at McDonald's to his countless videos on the same people over and over again for years on end. And these aren't just short little videos, these are hour-long tangents and tears to boot. He thinks there are a few people with millions of accounts discussing him. Oh, brother, Peter, you need to get over yourself. Years back, he wanted to collab with Jeffrey at one point and would always shout out Shane Dawson in the past. Now, once these influencers saw through his crap, they backed off and didn't want anything to do with him. And rightly so. He offers nothing to the beauty community. He just sits on his front porch or sofa or bed and bitches everybody out. Of course, dear St. Petey can do no wrong, of course. Also, do check out the Reddit Snark page. There is a particularly vile tweet posted there that is raising a lot of questions. Peter, we know you read over there all of the time. And Peter, you are fully aware of how your granny pack attacks other content creators. Back in the day, on Guru Gossip, they were called the Lard Pack. That's a classic name if I do say so myself. You are, after all, king of the diets. Now, at the end of this little rant session of the day, you'll find a story to listen to. As we all know, our dear old Petey loves his books. Oops, I mean audible books. Listening and reading, Peter, are two different things, old boy. This porch is my pulpit, a story brought to you by Topics and Tea. The weathered boards of the front porch creaked under the weight of an old man as he planted his rocking chair with a force that echoed his mood. The sky was a canvas of dimming light, but the glow from his camera set up on the small, rickety table before him cast harsh shadows across the creased map of his face. "Listen here," he barked, the veins in his neck bulging as his voice tore through the quiet Indianapolis suburb like the roar of a disturbed beast. "You snot-nosed influencers are nothing but a bunch of charlatans." His fist slammed down onto the arm of the chair, the wood protesting with a sharp crack. The front porch had become his stage, and he, known infamously across YouTube as the ranting recluse, was ready for his nightly performance. "Advice! I've got decades on you. Decades!" He jabbed a finger at the camera lens. His skin was leathered from years of sun, his eyes intense, the kind of eyes that had seen too much yet missed little. "None of you listen. You think you know it all with your hashtags and your filters." His laughter was like gravel thrown against a tin roof, bitter and jarring. "I've been around the block more times than you've got followers." The air around him seemed to tremble with the ferocity of his outrage as he leaned closer to the camera, ensuring his audience felt the full brunt of his contempt. "Where's the respect? Where's the wisdom?" He shook his head, eyes narrowing as if he could see each and every one of his viewers through the digital void. "You come into my house asking for advice, then scamper off like roaches when the light shines on your ignorance." He paused, chest heaving, before a sneer curled the edges of his lips. "But you'll be back. You always come back for more, 'cause deep down, you know I'm right." With a final glare, he snapped the camera off, his rant broadcast to thousands who knew him not by his real name, but by the fury and tirades that had made him an unwelcome legend in the digital age. The night swallowed the countryside in a thick blanket of darkness, punctuated only by the occasional flicker of distant lights. A pair of headlights cut through the void, the hum of an engine cruising down the empty road, indifferent to the sleeping world around it. Behind the wheel, his knuckles white against the steering wheel, the old man grumbled under his breath. His thoughts were a tangled mess, a cacophony of vitriol and resentment that echoed the rants he was famous for. The quiet of the night mocked him. It was too still, too serene for a soul tormented by its own fury. Suddenly, a small shadow darted into the beam of his headlights, a brief flash of life that crossed his path without warning. There was a dull thud, the car jolted slightly, and then it was over. In the rearview mirror, the shape of Ricky the raccoon lay motionless on the asphalt. The old man's jaw clenched, but he did not stop. "Stupid creature," he muttered, as if the raccoon had personally affronted him by its mere existence. He didn't slow down, didn't glance back again. It was as if the incident were no more than a pebble kicked aside by a boot, irrelevant, inconsequential. Yet, as the miles stretched on, a strange silence began to press in around him. The anger that usually kept him company, that fueled his every tirade, seemed to falter in the wake of the night's event. His vision blurred, not with tears. They were strangers to him, but with the sudden weight of something unrecognizable. A solitary sob broke free, a guttural sound that scraped against the walls of the car before dissipating into the emptiness. "Damn them all," he whispered, the words catching in his throat. His mind flashed to the accusing eyes of unseen viewers, the influencers who ignored his advice, the audience that fed off his anger. They would never know this moment of weakness. They would never see the cracks in his armor. The car sped on, a solitary figure encapsulated within, surrounded by darkness both outside and within. The old man drove through the night, accompanied only by the echo of his sobs and the bitterness that clung to him as tenaciously as the shadows that retreated in his wake. The sun was setting over the quiet Indianapolis neighborhood, casting long shadows across the well-manicured lawns. On one particular front porch, however, the tranquility of the evening was shattered by a livid old man, Harold, with a face as crumpled as an old newspaper and eyes that burned with indignation. "Boneheads! The lot of ya!" he bellowed into the camera propped up in front of him, the device teetering on a shaky tripod. His gravelly voice echoed off the vinyl siding of his home as he continued to berate the invisible audience on the other side of the lens. "You call yourselves influencers? Ha!" Harold leaned closer to the camera, his nostrils flaring with each exasperated breath. "Listen here," he snapped, jabbing a gnarled finger towards the recording device. "I've been doling out advice since before you could walk, and if you had half a brain between the lot of you, you'd take it." He rocked back in his creaky porch chair, the wood groaning under his weight like a complaint against his tirade. With a scowl etched deep into his leathery skin, Harold unleashed another volley of criticism. "And you!" He pointed directly into the camera, as if singling out an individual from his multitude of viewers. "Yes, you! Sitting there with your pumpkin spice latte and your TikTok dances. You think you know better than me?" His laugh was harsh and mocking. "Think again." Every so often, his hand would shoot out to adjust the angle of the camera, ensuring his heated visage remained center stage. "I built this channel with blood, sweat, and no small amount of yelling," he growled, "and I'll be darned if I'll watch it go to the dogs because some wet-behind-the-ears influencer can't take a slice of good, honest criticism." As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, the porch light flickered on, casting Harold's irate expression in a harsh, artificial glow. He leaned back once more, arms crossed over his chest in a defiant stance. "Shape up or ship out," he concluded, punctuating his words with a vehement nod. "Because as long as I'm here, This porch is my pulpit, and I am the sermon you need, not the one you want." With that, he slammed his hand down on the camera, cutting the feed abruptly. Silence reclaimed the porch, leaving only the gentle rustling of leaves to whisper through the cooling night air. The night was a thick blanket of black, and the only sound was the growl of Harold's rusted truck as it barreled down the deserted Indiana backroad. The headlights cut through the darkness, two unwavering beams that seemed as angry and unyielding as the man behind the wheel. It was 3 a.m., and Harold was muttering curses under his breath, a litany of grievances against the world that dared to sleep while he roiled with unrest. A sudden thump beneath the wheels sent a jolt through the vehicle, and in the rearview mirror a dark shape lay motionless on the asphalt. Ricky, the raccoon's midnight foraging, had come to an abrupt end. But Harold, his jaw clenching tighter than the fists that gripped the steering wheel, didn't slow down. The impact was just another bump in his long, relentless drive, a drive that never seemed to take him where he wanted to go. "Stupid animal," he grumbled, though there was a tremor in his voice, a discordant note that hinted at something more than irritation. His gaze flicked back to the road ahead, the endless stretch that mirrored the hollow feeling gnawing at his insides. He could feel the sting in his eyes, the pressure of unshed tears that refused to fall. Harold was a reservoir of anger with no outlet but the one he created. The harsh words he spewed into the camera, the disdain he held for anyone who crossed his path. But here, alone in the cloak of night, with nothing but the hum of his engine and the ghostly image of the raccoon's body fading behind him, his bitterness found no purchase. "Damn influences," he spat out, trying to latch onto the familiar anger. "Can't even take advice." But the words sounded hollow, swallowed by the darkness around him. He glanced again at the empty passenger seat beside him, the silence an oppressive force that he couldn't bully or berate into submission. Harold's breaths came in shallow bursts, the closest semblance to weeping he would allow himself. No tears, no sobs, just the ragged inhale and exhale of a man whose heart had hardened too much to remember how to break. As the miles stretched on, the old man drove through the night, fleeing from his own shadow that loomed ever larger in the loneliness of his bitter existence.